Hello, my dear friends, and welcome to Dr. Monkey, where we laugh together and cry together, but hopefully take something away to treat each other a little better. Here's some interesting stories. One about a woman who threatened to call security on OP because OP didn't give her a gift card OP won in a raffle. Please subscribe if you haven't, and I hope you'll enjoy it. Story 1. About a week ago, there was a raffle at my sister's school, and the winner gets a $100 prepaid gift card that she can use anywhere. And the tickets were $5 each, or 5 for $20. I only bought one while this woman bought 5, and I ended up winning the gift card. After grabbing the gift card and talking to my sister and parents for a few minutes, I stepped out of the gymnasium to get a drink at the vending machine, where EM came up to me. EM, hey, would you be able to give me that gift card? I'm short on money and my son really needs it tomorrow. Me, no, sorry. I stepped around her and started walking back to the gymnasium when she hustled in front of me. EM, I told you I need it, right? Me, yeah. EM, so pass it here. She opened her hand out. Me, no, it's mine. I want it. If you were short on money, then you shouldn't have dropped $20 into the raffle. I stepped around her again when she grabbed my arm, saying, EM, give it here or I'll tell a constable you're assaulting me. Me, go right the heck ahead. There's a camera right there. Her face went completely red because her plan just fell apart, and she told me what to go do with myself as she stomped off. Some people are just terrible. Oh, I hate how their go-to is to cry and go, I'm the victim if you don't give me what I want, and then threaten to tell some authority figure you victimized them or actually do say they were victimized to said authority figure. I think these false reports should be charged criminally. Would put a damper on claiming to be a victim while trying to actively victimize someone else. Story 2. This started last week. I had no idea my little brother was trying to continue this torment until earlier tonight. I'll start with what happened then. A few nights ago, I was enjoying dinner with my family before my brother swung his leg into me and kicked my leg. My parents didn't even react and expected me to just deal with it and move on. A few days later, I had just finished vacuuming the house. I sat down on my bed and relaxed, but was then disrupted by the sound of the vacuum again. I walked outside and saw my brother vacuuming the places I checked thoroughly. I told him we don't need to vacuum there, and as soon as I walked near him, he dropped the vacuum and punched me. According to my parents, that was my fault, and I was supposed to move on. Yesterday, I came home from work after a long and tiring day, and my parents needed to go out for the night. I had no idea about this, and they sprung it on me out of nowhere. They expected me to know, and were rather irritated that I didn't, even though they didn't explain. They ordered me to make dinner immediately. Luckily, there were leftovers in the fridge I could heat up. I went to the kitchen and began heating up leftover chicken. Once it had been heated up, I split up the container into 2 parts using a fork. I filled one bowl for me and another for my little brother. I kept the remaining chicken in the container for somebody else if they wanted to eat it for lunch or dinner. My little brother then walked into the kitchen and snatched the container and the fork away from me and dumped the rest into his bowl. I kindly asked him to give the fork back and told him I was saving the rest of the chicken for someone else that might be hungry. But, as I should have known, that was met by yells and verbal abuse. I quickly apologized for making dinner for him, and then he started yelling horrible things at me. In his words, or what I can remember at least, he said, You're the worst big brother. You failed at being a big brother. You're so freaking overprotective. I hate you. I'm sorry that Mom and Dad have to deal with you. These words deeply hurt me. Then I decided to retreat to another room for some alone time. As I sat there, I could still hear him yelling obscenities at me, and I was crying. I then noticed the dusting brush that had been broken in half, and threw it into the ground in sheer anger. I know I should not have done that, as that was rather immature, but I couldn't think of expressing my rage and sorrow in any other way. He saw this and walked into the room I was in. He picked it up and threw it at me, It nearly hit my head, and I threw up my arms to defend myself. I then got up from where I was sitting, and he ran away instantly. This isn't the first time he's thrown things at me either. He once threw a pin that almost hit me in the eye. I almost finished my dinner, and I thought that was the end of it. I was mistaken. He walked into the room while I wasn't paying attention and jammed the fork he was using into my arm. It actually drew blood, and I tried to defend myself and he ran off again. But I couldn't bring myself to chase after him. I was still recovering from the embarrassment and true horror I experienced during Halloween. I finished eating my dinner and cried to myself in my room. I felt alone and unsafe. Then I heard the sound of the garage door opening and my parents returning from their party. I tried to explain what happened, as I couldn't handle this myself. I tried talking it out with my little brother, but that didn't work. Their response was the usual, "Deal with it yourself." I tried to explain again that I needed help, but they instructed me to work it out with them, and that it wasn't their problem. I went back to my room annoyed. Now this afternoon, I just come home from another long day at work and I'm finally getting a break. I finished all of my work and need to wait for a special celebration next year in January, which is when I'll be returning there. I sat down, put everything away, and began watching Jujutsu Kaisen and playing Pokemon Scarlet on my Switch. I'd already told my dad about my good news, so I was just waiting for Mom to get home so I could tell her as well. She eventually did come home, and I walked up to her room to tell her about my news. I waited in the doorway and waited for her to get ready and put her stuff away before I could talk to her. As I stood there, I heard my little brother come up behind me. He said the words, "Hey Mom," in a welcoming voice. But then that voice turned into an aggravated tone for absolutely no reason. I remember him saying the words, "Oh my God," before stomping away. I tried asking him what was wrong later, but he told me to just back off. I told my mom and she was very happy for me as well. I thought my life was about to turn in the right direction, but I was wrong again. Later, when we were having dinner, my little brother decided to speak about last night and how awful I was to him. They believed all of his lies, and that I tried to explain what happened. Apparently, I kicked him first during that time he kicked me, and I turned off the vacuum so he punched me. They believed this, and berated me for acting like his parent and babysitter, even though that is exactly what they told me to do. I tried to talk to them about how they were wrong in all this, and tell them what actually happened, free of my brother's lies. But I was cut off again for being disrespectful. My mother then started screaming and berating me about how her life was so hard, and she wants us to pretend to get on and be happy with each other, and using me as her emotional punching bag again. I was resisting the urge to cry, knowing that it would only make things worse. They'd yell at me for crying too. My brother then brought up the fact that I said my parents are using me as a scapegoat and a mental punching bag. I've never said that to him. He may have heard me muttering at some point. This only caused more yelling, and I felt incredibly stressed out. I tried to leave the table multiple times, but I was dragged back there verbally, even though I wanted to say no. I was forced to listen how my little brother doesn't have any more compassion for me left, since I'm such a bad brother. My parents tried to have us finish up with things we enjoyed so that we could escape to watch their scripted live-action shows. I told them I was happy with the shiny Pokemon I recently acquired in Scarlet, while my brother rambled on about how he could no longer enjoy the things I loved, as I sucked all the joy out of them just because I liked them, which were his exact words. Also, apparently he wasn't aiming for me when he threw the brush. Even if he didn't purposely aim, I didn't know that, and my parents expected me to. After I left the table, I sat in the room and cried. I felt awful. I was forced to listen to more lies and more verbal abuse from my family, all because of one simple fact. I had the audacity to make dinner for my little brother. On a short note, during my Halloween adventures, my parents didn't come with us because they wanted to watch TV and get drunk. On another short note, I have a dream. I want to be adopted by Midnight and Mount Lady from My Hero Academia, or Mikama from Chainsaw Man, or Professor Sada from Pokemon. It really is a wonderful dream, and I want it to come true someday. Thank you all for listening to my story. It's time to go out and go no contact and let them deal with the little craphead they created. This is straight up abuse. There's one thing you can do. Get the heck out of there. Nothing you can do can make it better. Besides, leave and don't look back. Story 3. So I posted an ad on Nextdoor I was open for babysitting. I have 5 years experience through family and friends, so while I was in my second period math class, I got a text asking if I was still looking for work. We'll call her EM. I respond that I am, and we work out an interview at 4 o'clock the next day. Now, where I live is super cold this time of year, and I can't drive yet, so I had to walk the 1.5 miles in the snow to EM's with my backpack still on. When I get to the house, I'm basically thrown into chaos and asked to start helping with babysitting. I'm confused, as we agreed to have an interview, but I take it as more of a trial run and introduce myself to the 3 kids. After an hour, EM offers to drive me home and asks if I still want the job. Desperate for money, I agree. I tell her my rate is $15 an hour, and she immediately shoots me down. Minimum wage in my state is $12. She says that her rate is $7.50 per hour with a 50-cent raise every 3 months. I want to shoot it down, but I really need the money. And say to make up for my lost money, she can drive me home after my shifts, which she agrees to. Cut to today. I get up at 9 a.m. and get ready, and EM agrees to pick me up. I get into the car and we chat for a bit when she starts asking about my relationship with my parents. Now I have a rocky relationship, and I don't want to go into it, but she keeps pushing me and I eventually tell her. By the time I finish, we'd reached the grocery store because she needed to pick up groceries. EM leaves me in a car with the youngest, we'll call him R, and the special needs kid, who we'll call C. Now R is a COVID baby with attachment issues, and he starts screaming for EM to come back. I keep him calm enough until EM comes back. Now I worry about C because he's crying and seems to be in pain, but he's nonverbal so he can't tell me what's wrong. I'm stressed and juggling the 2 of them when EM finally comes back and stops crying. Now, nothing notable happens until we get to their house. I help R out of his seat while EM gets C out of his seat too. The oldest kid, we'll call him E, gets out on his own. When we get into the house, EM sets C on the couch and asks me to feed R. So I get him in his high chair and start to feed him. But not even 2 minutes and EM's telling me to take C up to his room and put on his music. So I carry C up to his room and put on his music, and an ad starts and he starts screaming. EM comes up in a huff and asks, "Where's the freaking music?" I have issues with adults yelling at me, so I point to the iPad and say, "There's an ad." She rolls her eyes and tells me to go finish feeding R while she goes into her room. I finish feeding R and clean him up when EM comes down and tells me to vacuum the upper floor. Everything else is hardwood. I run upstairs to get the vacuum and start with R's room, then E's room, which I had to pick up both before vacuuming, and avoid C's room upon EM's request. I finish and put the vacuum away, and before I've even finished wrapping up the cord, EM tells me to go wrap Christmas presents for her. So, I go downstairs, make all the gift bags for her friends, and start wrapping Christmas presents while I listen to a podcast. I haven't even finished wrapping E's gifts when she demands I come upstairs and switch out the laundry and load and unload the dishwasher. Meanwhile, C is screaming and EM is watching Netflix on the couch. I go to check on C, and EM yells at me and tells me I'm not done with the dishes. I walk back and feel horrible as C cries on and on and on. When I finish, I go check on C, and she tells me not to bother and to just go home for the day. I ask her if she can drive me as the agreement stated, and she says no because she didn't feel like it. At the end of the day, I made $19.50, and she didn't even give me the money. The thing is, I really need a job so I can save up to move out of my toxic household, so I agreed to come back tomorrow. I really wanted to work with the kids, but all EM seems to want me to do is clean her house for her, when that is not why I was hired. But until I get another babysitting gig lined up, I'm stuck as a housekeeper for less than minimum wage. Quit. Immediately. Please, please quit. You can be polite. State that you don't think this job is a good fit since the pay is less than you need. Nothing. And you don't have transportation. I guarantee that she will berate you for quitting the job she never paid you for. Record the conversation if you can. Absolutely none of this will ever improve. It will only get worse, including the lack of pay. Someone else will call you eventually. Please, quit now. Story 4. I saw this when shopping recently. The store has carts that have a spot that can be utilized for a small child to sit. Think of a toddler you don't want to have running around loose. There is also 1 or 2 wheelchairs available for customers who may need them. Think of an elderly shopper who may be feeling fatigued, or maybe someone with mobility issues. As well as a scooter or 2, let me just say that if your child is able to put their foot down while the cart is moving, they are probably too big to ride in the cart. I was waiting for the service counter when I saw this. EM came into the store with her child. Kid looked to be about 8 or 9. The kid seemed to be a typical active kid, a very healthy child. A very robust, well-fed child. His gait was normal. He didn't seem like anything was off. Then I guess the decision was made that he didn't want to walk around the store. So, EM decides that her kid is going to ride in the wheelchair. Store manager sees him, EM and child, and asks if the child cannot use the chair. If there was someone at customer service requesting the use of a wheelchair. EM gets huffy because her child is tired and had a long day and doesn't want to have to walk. By this time, I'm just hanging around to see what happens next. EM decides that her kid will ride in the shopping cart, so the kid, at the mother's instruction, and climbs into the shopping cart and gets stuck in the seat. EM is now mad because the seats on the cart aren't big enough for her child. The manager is calling his supervisor. The kid is wailing, EM is screaming, and the only thing I can think of is, why the heck isn't that child walking? I mean, I have 2 kids, and the only time they would ride in the cart is when they were too little to walk, and they were walking like drunken sailors. So, as soon as they were steady on their feet when we went out, they would walk alongside the cart. Is that not the norm? EM needs to get a dose of reality that her child can walk and her so-called angel is too big to fit into the cart. The child is 8 years old and walks around like everybody else. Obviously, she never told her child the word no. Well, guys, that's all for today. If you liked this video, please consider subscribing. And if you missed the last episode on the channel, I'm gonna link it right here. The story's about OP's aunt, who thought it's nothing with OP and ignored it totally. But turned out OP had leukemia. Check this out if you haven't, and I'll see you next time on Dr. Monkey.